You handled it so well. I didn't. I lost my spark, bled in silence, shattered in private, and wore a smile that lied better than any mask. Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Burns, and welcome to the next part of the e-conference. My presentation is pre-recorded as I have some medical errands to attend to today, but I hope you all will enjoy and learn from this nonetheless. I will be focusing on misophonia and chronic illness and how it affects my life. But first, let's start from the beginning. I was around 10 years old when I first realized that certain sounds made me feel like I was being torn apart from the inside out. It started during something as routine and sacred as daily prayer with my family. We would gather in the evening and pray the Catholic prayer called the Rosary. But instead of feeling peaceful or connected, I found myself shrinking inward, gritting my teeth at every sharp S sound that left someone's lips. I couldn't explain why it bothered me so much. All I knew was that those soft, whispery hisses grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I thought it was just me being weird or overly sensitive. But eventually, it got too overwhelming. I started wincing or tensing up during prayer, and sometimes I would excuse myself early. When I finally opened up about it, hoping someone would understand, the response crushed me. I was called a brat, dramatic, and ungrateful. It's just a sound, they said. Get over it. But I couldn't. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Just couldn't. As the years went on, my reactions expanded beyond just the S sounds. Suddenly, the noise of people eating, chewing, slurping, swallowing became unbearable. Then came the foot tapping. Repetitive movements and sounds that other people barely noticed felt like psychological torture to me. These triggers didn't annoy me. They enraged me. They sent a flash of heat to my face, a pulse of electricity through my chest. I wasn't trying to be rude. I wasn't trying to overreact. I simply couldn't help the reaction. It hijacked my whole nervous system. I felt alienated in my own home. I started avoiding family meals. I dreaded car rides, classroom settings, group events, any place where people would inevitably do something that made me feel like ripping my ears off. But no one really took it seriously. I was just moody, sensitive, or too much. And part of me started believing that. Maybe I was the problem. Then, when I was 15, everything changed. I was online one night, desperately trying to make sense of what was happening to me. That's when I stumbled across the word misophonia. It was like reading a description of my entire life. The intense reaction to specific sounds, the rage, the isolation, the confusion. It was all there, in black and white, and the stories of people who had experienced the exact same thing. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't crazy. Maybe a little bit crazy. I compiled everything I found, articles, forums, early research papers, and printed them out. Then I brought the stack to my dad. I was terrified he'd laugh it off or roll his eyes, but to my surprise, he didn't. He read through it carefully and then looked at me and said, "This makes sense. I believe you." Just like that, he believed me. That moment was one of the first time I felt seen and validated. I wasn't a brat. I wasn't broken. I had a name for what I was going through, and someone finally took it seriously. I showed the same research to another family member who had often dismissed my reactions in the past. Her response wasn't as immediate. It took her time, months, maybe longer, to come around. She didn't resist out of cruelty. She just didn't understand. But little by little, as she saw how consistent and real my reactions were, and how I wasn't using misophonia as an excuse, but rather fighting against it every day, she began to accept it. Eventually, she even apologized for how she had treated me in the past. For a while, I truly thought that was the end of my struggles. I had found a name for what was wrong. I had found my people. I had the incredible opportunity to be introduced to Shaylin Hayes-Raymond, a powerful misophonia advocate and therapist. Through her work and writing, I finally saw someone using their voice to fight for the legitimacy of this condition. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was part of a movement. I developed healthier coping skills, gained a deeper understanding of the emotional complexity of misophonia, and even got to write about my experience in Misophonia International, a magazine dedicated to giving voice to those of us with this little understood condition. For the first time in years, I felt like I was thriving despite misophonia. I was managing. I was part of big changes in the misophonia world, including directly participating in campaigns for the International Misophonia Foundation. I was healthy. I had hope. But in 2023, everything turned upside down again. For 4 long months, I battled a series of mysterious and debilitating symptoms. I was having a hard time speaking and eating, growing weaker, my muscles seemed to betray me, and everyday tasks became harder and harder. I was already juggling life with misophonia, raising a 2-year-old, living in a shared household with family and my husband, and now I felt like my body was giving up on me. It was one of the most stressful periods of my life. I didn't know what was happening, only that something was very, very wrong. Eventually, when I started choking on my food and went 2 days without being able to eat or drink much, I could not ignore it anymore. I went to the emergency room, terrified and exhausted. What followed was a blur of tests, blood draws, medical jargon, an MRI. I was monitored for 38 hours while specialists tried to make sense of my symptoms. I cried myself to sleep that night in the ER. I thought I was going to die. Then finally, a specialist sat down with me and said the words that would change my life again. We believe you likely have a neuromuscular autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. Fast forward a little bit, I was admitted to the hospital for 10 days to stabilize my condition. I was placed on plasmapheresis, which is a treatment that filters the blood and removes the harmful antibodies attacking my muscles. After just 2 sessions, I began to feel dramatically better, clearer, stronger. Eventually, the same specialist confirmed the diagnosis. It was official. I have myasthenia gravis. Once again, I had to find a new normal. I had to grieve the life I thought I had just finally gotten under control. Now, on top of managing my misophonia, I had to adjust to life with a chronic illness that could affect my ability to speak, move, or even eat or drink on bad days. There is no manual for how to cope with being diagnosed with a second life-altering condition. But I have learned that I am more resilient than I ever believed. The skills I developed in navigating misophonia, self-advocacy, emotional regulation, persistence, have helped me walk through this new storm. Some days are hard. Some days I want to scream at the unfairness of it all. And most days, I simply keep going. Because I have to. I show up for myself, for my child, my husband, my family, his family, for the life I still have, even if it looks different than I imagined. Misophonia taught me that being misunderstood doesn't mean you're making it up. Myasthenia gravis reminded me that even when your body fails you, your spirit doesn't have to. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I faced the worst so far, and I'm still standing. Maybe not as strong as before, but more certain of who I am, now than ever. So now we're going to dive into my PowerPoint where I talk mostly about how I cope with misophonia and my chronic illness, which is myasthenia gravis. All right, so we have a table of contents here. We have an objective, an introduction, myasthenia gravis, a life rebalanced, misophonia, living with sound sensitivity since age 10, understanding chronic illness, what is misophonia, current misophonia research, how chronic illness and misophonia overlap, challenges faced by individuals with both conditions, management strategies, and coping mechanisms, and then finally the conclusion. All right, so I did give you a bit of an introduction to myself, but here's a little short reminder. My name is Sharon, and I suffer from misophonia and an autoimmune disease, myasthenia gravis. The purpose of this presentation is to explore the connection between chronic illness and misophonia, their challenges, and coping mechanisms. All right, introduction. So what's a chronic illness? A chronic illness is a condition lasting 3 or more months requiring ongoing management. So, as I had explained in my story, I was dealing with myasthenia symptoms for 4 months before getting officially diagnosed. And so now I'm going through ongoing treatment with medication, and the reason I'm not here live is because I'm going through a medical infusion, and so I'm just busy with that at the moment. And it's really helping me so far. I would not have been able to talk this much without it. So I take that as a good sign. I'm still a little bit slurry every now and then, but I hope you can forgive that, or if you notice it, just kind of forgive it, and I hope you can take away something new, learn something new from this presentation. Okay, so misophonia. Misophonia is a neurological disorder causing strong emotional and physical reactions to specific sounds. Both conditions can significantly impact the quality of life, and I'll go into that. So here's just a little summary of my story that I told earlier. In 2023, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, a rare autoimmune disorder that causes muscle weakness. And I already talked about how I suffered through 4 months before I went to the ER. Simple tasks, talking, walking, even eating and drinking had become exhausting. I've had to slow down, ask for help, and learn how to manage unpredictable symptoms. Living with MG, or myasthenia gravis, I will refer to myasthenia gravis as MG from now on. So living with MG taught me the power of rest, self-advocacy, and redefining what strength looks like. And here's misophonia. I've lived with misophonia since I was 10 years old. That's nearly 2 decades. I am not to make myself look old or anything. Everyday sounds like chewing, tapping, swallowing, S sounds, that's the biggest one for me, S sounds, sniffing, etc., can trigger intense emotional and physical reactions. Misophonia isn't just irritation. It's a fight or flight response I can't control. I can't control it, and other misophonia sufferers cannot control it. So alongside MG, misophonia has shaped how I move through the world. However, with tools, boundaries, and support, I've built a life of resilience and awareness. Okay. So let's try to understand chronic illness. Examples of chronic illnesses other than myasthenia, which is an autoimmune disease. We have chronic pain conditions, diabetes, and fibromyalgia. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. Bear with me. So these illnesses can affect daily life, like fatigue, pain, cognitive struggles, and emotional distress. Chronic illness is an ongoing struggle requiring management rather than a cure. Same with misophonia. Yeah, so myasthenia gravis does not have a cure, and neither does misophonia. Misophonia does not have a cure. Both of these things require management. What is misophonia? Misophonia is an extreme reaction to specific sounds. Common triggers include chewing, breathing, pen clicking, and tapping. I say and tapping, but every misophonia sufferer is different. Like for example, for me, my main trigger is S sounds. Cannot stand it. I hear it, I have to go to another room, put on headphones, and have to chill. So not every misophonia sufferer is going to suffer from that particular trigger. It could be another consonant or another vowel that they suffer from. It could be other repetitive movements. That's a whole other thing. But yeah. So the emotional and physical reactions that come along with misophonia are anxiety, rage, panic, fight or flight response. And it differs from general sound sensitivity, which is hyperacusis, which is also a whole other thing. I don't know if Shaylin is going to go into depth about that, but yeah, it's a whole other thing. All right, so current misophonia research. The current research says that misophonia is heightened amygdala response and hyperconnectivity in the brain. So that's what's going on, right? That's what they think is going on right now. The brain perceives trigger sounds as a threat, leading to intense emotional responses. There are ongoing studies into the neurological basis of misophonia. So how do chronic illness and misophonia overlap? And you're going to see some underlined words and some phrases here that I'll point out to you in just a minute. It has been shown in literature, but not confirmed, that misophonia might be more common in those with chronic illness. And I put a little citation here from Healthline. So these underlined words and phrases like not confirmed and might, may over here, that's just to stress that it's not something that's been absolutely proven. Yes, there are tests. Yes, there are certain results, but not enough studies have been done yet. So that's kind of what I want to stress here and say that this has to go through more testing. Moving on. Sensory processing issues and neurological conditions like fibromyalgia, again, I'm sorry if I mispronounce that, migraines, or autism may increase the likelihood of misophonia. There are some shared symptoms between these things: fatigue, stress sensitivity, heightened nervous system response. So I put a little example here. In my case, I find that my myasthenia gravis is triggered in extreme stress, not enough sleep, and extreme weather. It could be hot or cold. And in turn, my misophonia is triggered by the stress of the myasthenia flare. My sound sensitivity skyrockets, I'm more irritable, and my flare can get worse. And if I can't get myself calm, I will inevitably snap. So it's really important that I take a step back and take like 5 minutes to calm myself down with deep breathing. Sometimes I listen to white noise, or I just scroll on my phone and just kind of let my mind go numb for a little bit. All right. So challenges faced by individuals with both conditions. Social isolation due to triggers and mobility issues, 100%. It is really difficult to move with myasthenia gravis sometimes. Even short distances, like a 3-minute walk to the marketplace, and then the 3-minute walk back to your residence can be extremely tiring. It could put you out for like the rest of the day. And then the triggers, that's like a whole other load, like a mental load. So then that increases your irritability, right? And then it makes you more tired because now you're mentally tired and you're physically tired and you just don't want to do anything else now. So that kind of leads into my second point. There's increased stress and mental health challenges. So then maybe you get back home from that trip and then you start thinking like, why am I like this? Blah, blah, blah. Man, this sucks. I get so tired. And then everything around me is a trigger. And you sometimes that can lead into a mental spiral. And then there's also difficulty in work in public environments. Definitely, if you're triggered at work, it's hard to do your work efficiently. And if you're out and about in public and you're trying to have fun with your family, with your loved one, with your kid, with a friend, it's hard to just have fun and focus on your friend and the fun that you're having when you have so many things triggering you, or you're on the lookout, I guess. You're scanning for triggers, right? So it's hard to focus on that. And the other one is lack of understanding from family, friends, and medical professionals. Definitely, like in my story that I just told. My family didn't understand, but they did come around eventually, so that's a good ending. My friends, they seemed accepting. They didn't really understand it, but they seemed pretty accepting. And then medical professionals, yeah, definitely had my fair share of medical professionals that didn't know what that was and didn't know how to help, so they just didn't help me. Very frustrating. Okay. Managing chronic illness. It is important to pace yourself and conserve energy. So that 3-minute walk, maybe you need to find a bench to sit on for a minute and then continue going. And then you need to do the same thing when you come back. Come back to your residence. Just find a place to just kind of sit down, or if there isn't a place to sit down, you can lean against a wall. Just kind of take a few deep breaths and then continue on. Then there's also medication for the chronic illness specifically, therapy, and medical interventions that can be very helpful. And stress management techniques, we have mindfulness, which I kind of talked about that, like deep breathing, do a little bit of deep breathing. And then there's gentle exercise and diet adjustments. So the gentle exercise, it varies from person to person on what gentle exercise is for them. If running in place isn't gentle exercise for you, then that's not gentle exercise. Maybe you can do a slower version of that. You can do like knee highs, like slow knee highs or something. And you can also do stretching. You can do some yoga or stuff like that. And then diet adjustments, definitely. It kind of varies from person to person. For me, I try to stay away from too much sugar and too much caffeine, too many carbs, and too much alcohol. That's kind of like the 4 things I try and stay away from. And then I'm also currently thinking about trying like not a diet plan, but like doing some research on foods that can help get my blood pressure up because I also have low blood pressure. Excuse me. It's like consistently under 90, like 90 over 50 or 88 over 50 or something like that. And all the medical professionals are like, that's kind of low. And I'm like, yeah, that's normal. Unfortunately, I used to have really good blood pressure. It was normal. And then I got this illness and it all changed. So that's part of my, that's one of the things on my to-do list, to see if there's something I can eat that will help my blood pressure, or if there are certain things that are causing my blood pressure to go down, to just stop eating those things, or if I'm not doing the right exercise to help my blood pressure. That's a lot of research I would have to do. So anyways, moving on. So managing misophonia. This is something I do like every day. I use noise canceling headphones and I play white noise through them, sometimes combined with rain and wind, and just like other sounds, like nature sounds, as long as they're not too like grating on my ears. Earplugs, I wear earplugs every day, and white noise machines. I don't use that specifically for myself. I do have it for my son just because he goes to sleep with that. But I do put it on if I'm in his room playing with him because it's just too quiet. And then triggers are amplified, and then that's just a whole mess for me. So I'm like, I'm going to use your white noise machine. Okay, and the second point is therapy. And I highlighted Canada Counseling with Shaylin Hayes-Raymond because she does specialize in this kind of treatment, therapy for misophonia and other mental health related issues for Canada. I don't know if she'll do US. You would have to talk to her about that. But I know definitely, obviously, Canada. Okay. Communication strategies for family and workplace accommodations. So what does that mean? Just approaching them in a respectful manner and just saying like, hey, I have this condition and this is what I need in order to feel comfortable or work better. And I didn't do that very well when I was 15. All I did was present research. It was hard for me to ask for certain things to be done or not be done so that I don't get triggered around my family. And then, like, I don't know why it was so hard. I guess because of all the trauma that I went through for years. And they were just calling me a brat or what have you. And it's not their fault. They really thought I was being a brat. So I mean, and they tried to handle it the way that they thought was best, and but unfortunately, I think that has really prevented me from talking to my family about help regarding my misophonia, at least, and now even my myasthenia. It's very difficult. I manage, but it's still very difficult. Workplace accommodations, I've been a little bit better about that, especially because I've learned to value my health a whole lot more, and I just try to advocate for myself more than what I did when I was 15 or even 20. And then seeking support groups in online communities. So that can look like Facebook groups for talking about misophonia, or I could look like Reddit groups. What else? What other social media platform? There's X or Twitter. There's Blue Sky. What else? YouTube. There's also YouTube. The International Misophonia Foundation has a YouTube, so there's a lot of good informational videos on misophonia. So if that's your fancy, if you like to watch videos about that, then I would highly recommend searching International Misophonia Foundation on YouTube. Okay. Overlapping management strategies. So stress management techniques that work for both conditions: deep breathing, as I mentioned before, mindfulness, and therapy. So there's that word again, mindfulness. So for me, that means like really noticing what I'm thinking to myself about my trigger or about my disease. If I'm thinking like, I'm such a bad mom because I can't play with my son, I get so tired, then I kind of just stop and I just think about that thought that I just had. And then I try to remove any judgment from it. So what does that look like for me? That just looks like I'm mom and I have an autoimmune disease. And that's just a fact. It's not placing judgment. It's just saying, yes, I'm a mom, because I am mom. And I also have an autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. So that's just focusing on the autoimmune disease. But it could also be misophonia. You can think about, man, I hate that person whistling right now. And then you could just be like, you could just stop for a second and say, well, hold on a minute. Maybe they just like to whistle. It makes them feel good. And that doesn't make me a bad person, that I don't like this whistling. Let me just see if I can put some headphones on. Or if they're going to be next to me for a little while, maybe I can mention something. Just kind of like think about solutions. That's kind of how I do that, my mindfulness. In therapy, I do therapy like bi-weekly. I go to my therapist bi-weekly, through virtual means. That's very helpful because that saves me a lot of energy for my myasthenia. And then the second point, importance of self-advocacy and educating others. Kind of already talked about that when I was telling my story about the hypothetical person whistling, and then you with the misophonia trigger of that whistle to maybe go up to that person if they're going to be with you for a while and just tell them about it. Educate them. And then creating an accommodating environment at work and at home. So for me, that looks like at home, I just find a secluded place like my room, or I just put on headphones and I just kind of chill. At work, I put on headphones and I continue my work because I don't have a secluded place that I can go to. And that normally does the trick. Okay, so we have a reframing misophonia worksheet. I'm going to try and see if I can zoom in real quick. Aha, I can. Okay. So, reframing is a cognitive tool that is used to help cope with negative emotions. Although the trigger for misophonia happens before we have an emotional response, we can still reframe our beliefs about misophonia. The idea here is to write down our negative thoughts about misophonia and then rewrite them in a way that no longer associates the origin of the trigger as the instigator. So here's an example of the misophonia thought. Why did he have to whistle? It is so rude. I hate whistling. This is so cruel. Misophonia thought, reframed. He probably doesn't know that whistling upsets me. Maybe he's happy, or trying to keep himself calm. So I'm going to go ahead and give everyone just a minute to, if you have misophonia, if you don't have misophonia, that's fine. Think of something else that might make you upset. But if you have misophonia, definitely see if you can implement this worksheet and think about your misophonia thought. You don't have to say it out loud if you don't want to. And then think about how you can reframe it. So I'll go ahead and just give you a minute to think about that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on. So then we have a little conclusion here. So chronic illness and misophonia can significantly impact quality of life, making daily activities challenging. Research suggests, there's another word that's underlined, suggests a potential overlap due to shared neurological and sensory processing issues. Managing both conditions requires a combination of medical support, stress management, and environmental modifications. Advocacy and awareness are essential for better support and accommodations in workplaces, schools, and social environments. So I have an activity for everyone. Think of one invisible challenge you faced, something others may not see right away. Then, think of one strength you've developed because of it. And I'll give everyone another minute to think about it. And if you want to write in the chat, that's totally fine. I should have suggested that for the misophonia reframing worksheet. But anyway, go ahead and take a minute to just think about this invisible challenge and a strength that you've developed because of it. All right. I hope you've all had time to think about your activity. I went ahead and did it myself. So mine is called Suffering Silently. That is my invisible challenge. As a kid, I didn't understand why everyday sounds made me feel like I was being attacked. My classmates bullied me when I reacted, and at home, my parents punished me for acting out, not knowing what I was going through. So I learned to bury my pain, to cry in private, and to survive quietly. That pattern followed me into adulthood, even in my That pattern followed me into adulthood. Even in my romantic relationship, I struggle to ask for help. I try to handle everything on my own until I'm completely overwhelmed. Then I break down. It's like I'm still that kid trying not to cause trouble. However, I'm working on unlearning that for mine, my husband's, and my child's benefit. I'm realizing that true strength isn't silence. It's letting yourself be seen. And even though it's hard, I'm learning that I deserve support too. All right, I think that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope I'll see you all live next time.